So welcome everybody to part 3 of the self-belief series. I'm absolutely loving these series and really enjoying everybody who's coming on to watch them, but really also loving the people that I'm interviewing and talking to and their incredible stories. So I'm really excited to introduce Carla to you today. Carla and I met, I don't know what year it was a while ago now, through a mutual love of beautiful skincare and business. And we have been just connected ever since. Carla, can you remember when we had an event to go to up in Queensland and you were there and you kindly did my hair in an upstyle?
Absolutely. It was such a highlight because for anyone that doesn't know, when we were involved in that business, Tracy was a bit of a superstar in that as well. So I was this little coastal country girl having some time with Tracy Seacombe. I thought was just so incredible. So it was super fun doing your hair that day, Trace.
And you did such an amazing job of it. I took so many photos of the back of my head, or got other people to, because I was so impressed with what you did with my hair. It was so fun. But I was really struck. You know, I really remember when I meet people and I really resonate with someone, and what I could feel, which I probably couldn't articulate as well back then, was your energy. Like I could really feel this beautiful energy where I just know that you adore helping people. How long have you been like that? Is that why you became a hairdresser?
Want to get out of it, and I'll just load it straight up on here. If you can just
okay, I'm just going to, Lorraine, can you just mute? There you go. If everyone can just make sure they're on mute, that'd be great. Sorry, Carla, go ahead.
Fantastic. Yes, I think I've always been someone that loves to help people. I can remember even as a child, my parents both were self-employed and have always, had their own businesses. So being a bigger family in that, we have to help, and there was lots of different aspects to that. And then I think as I grew up, even in primary school, I was like school captain, and took that responsibility so proudly so that I could help other people. And then I guess that's just eventuated into everything that I've done since then.
And it's so interesting because someone who was school captain, somebody who loves to help, someone who comes across as so beautiful and so confident, and you're in the industry where, you're helping other people to look beautiful, all of those things, it struck me once I met you through Soul Pleaser to realize that you had some insecurities. And I guess when I came out of the closet about, Soul Pleaser and started talking about my soul, the people who had known me in that other world that we met in also probably thought, what? She lacks self-belief. So how does that happen? How does someone like you, that to the outside world, you look like you've got it all together and you're really confident? What's your self-belief story? Why didn't you always have that belief in yourself?
Yeah, and I think you're so right. I see it so often in people, and I wouldn't have been able to articulate it then either. But there's so much that comes around it. Like I think as I know there's some men on here as well, but I think for me, as speaking as a woman, we can get really good at having a social mask, and we put this like shield up of perfection, and we can do it all and have it all and be it all, and we measure ourselves against all these different kinds of ideals. And what happens is when we fall in the trap of doing that, like I find we continue to move that needle forward, and sometimes it feels like we're not leveling up to that all the time. And then so we have this internal lack of self-belief, or lack of inner confidence and knowing of who we are, because we can get caught up in the social aspect, what we perceive to be true for us, not actually owning really who we are. And so I think, sometimes we just get so caught up in that once we realize that that's what's actually going on inside, for me, I was like, oh.
And you can see how it can snowball because you get some positive feedback and you thrive on it. But then you've set a benchmark for yourself. So whatever it was that that person said to you, like whether they said that you were pretty or that you were nice or that you were kind or that you were generous, then it's like, okay, that's how I'm perceived. So my self-worth is attached to that. So I need to keep up that benchmark or actually exceed it. And then we just make a rod for our own back to be able to keep that up. And I think the feedback is probably where the whole loop starts. So it's positive feedback, but it becomes the addiction then to be able to always meet that particular need that we think people have for us.
And I think that's so true. Like, it happens unconsciously. And I have often referred to it, as a newborn baby, like they need to be fed, and they innately know through the whatever behaviors that they do, they're able to express that they want that nourishment and whatever through being fed. And I think as we grow older, we've kind of innately got that need for that nourishment and that, whatever it is that's fueling us. And so sometimes our behaviors extend into that. Like, we act and we do things because we know we're going to get that encouragement or that, reinforcement or whatever it is that we're using to feel our self-worth and our self-belief. And it kind of becomes like a habit that we can be unconsciously doing just because we know that we want that feeling.
It's so true. And it really ties into the title of this program, the Self-Belief series, is that the self-belief has to start with the understanding of the self. Because if we don't really understand the self and we don't know who we really are, then we can look for that fuel and that lighting up and that energy and that feedback from outside of ourselves, when all along we can get it from within ourselves. And the amazing thing is that once you actually get that recognition from within you, you don't need it anymore from without you. And it feels like it just comes to you because you don't need it. It's just the old adage of letting go of attachment and needing something, rather than getting everything that you need from within, and then everything you thought you needed just flows to you. So let's go back a little bit. When do you think, because we both believe now that when we come in, we're just perfect, pure happiness and love and light. And so, we don't rock up here with any sort of lack of self-belief. We think we're awesome when we shoot in. When do you think you had some doubt added to that belief? How old were you and how did it come about?
Well, I am from quite a huge family. And when I say huge family, there's only 4 children in my family, but we have a great big extended family. And I'm probably quite young in the scale of all of those people. And so I'm fortunate enough to have some amazing family members. And so I think as a younger child, looking up to all these people, thinking, my God, like, can I be that? And can I, do all of these things? So I think, there was that element of like aspiring to be these other people, and realizing that I'm not there, and now it would be like, I'm not there yet, because of course I was so much younger. But I think falling into that trap of comparison so young that I didn't understand all the other dimensions that come with that. And, that's from like a whole life perspective. But I also remember, because I do a lot of work with women now around body confidence and things like that. And, and I remember being a young child and my body was perfectly fine, but sitting down the way that we were supposed to sit at school. And it was like I had this like fat fold on my knees, which everyone has. But I just remember looking at them going, oh, no one else has that. Like, oh my God, why am I like this and not like that? So yes, I think I was very in tune from a ridiculously young age of noticing what other people had, not what I had.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because there's actually a TV program at the moment that started last night called Mirror Mirror, on Channel 10, I think. And it interviewed kids, and they had a normal Barbie doll, normal as in the Barbie doll that, came out first, and then probably an average sized Barbie doll. And they asked all of these children, which one do you like? And they picked up the skinny one. Which one is smarter? And they picked up the skinny one. Which one's mean? And they picked up the larger one. Just all of these, like, inbuilt at such a young age, ideas around body, for example. But I think that comparison can start really early. As soon as we're surrounded by other people, we can look at other people and think that they are better than us in some way. And that really is one of the key elements that we discover when we discover ourselves, which is not only are we all magnificent, even though we're unique and we're different, there is no one person that is better than another person. And we all have different strengths, and we all love different things. And the other interesting thing about the way you talked about that, and even the way you talked about meeting me for the first time, is that sometimes we put people on a pedestal as if, they're some way more worthy than us because they have already achieved something that we would like to achieve. And so it's an interesting trait that we can pick up and develop, but it can certainly hold us back from being able to be really comfortable in our own skin and love who we are. So what changed for you? I remember you were so clear when you decided to do the Soul Pleaser program about why you wanted to do it. You wrote it down. You're like, this is why I'm here. Can you remember the things that you wanted to change back then?
Oh, yeah. Before I dive into that, I want to touch on the Barbie thing, because we speak quite openly about all of that stuff within my family. And my youngest daughter is 10, and we went to Brisbane for one of her hospital visits, and she had some money to spend. And we went on a hunt everywhere in Brisbane to find wheelchair Barbie. And I remember the girl behind the counter saying, like, to my daughter, she goes, "Why wheelchair Barbie? Like, there's, like, the shelves were full of Barbie." And she's like, "I just want wheelchair Barbie. She's so cool." And the lady was like a little puzzled at us and a little confused at why a young, healthy girl was just so, my daughter's collection of Barbies is not the average Barbie, which I love. But anyway, going back to why I ended up doing the Soul Pleaser program. Yes, I was at a stage in my life, I was very unawake to all of the things that were going on, and I'd built so much trust in Tracy as a person. And I remember actually sitting on the lounge one night, and there was a lot of things going on in my life that weren't amazing by any stretch of the imagination, and I was really being pulled in every different aspect. And as a part of me trying to, I'm going to say fix, but we'll go with fix. As a part of me trying to fix some of those aspects, I was opening up my own business from home, because I needed to be able to fit in all these trips to Brisbane for 2 of our children to the hospital, and my husband wasn't in a great space. And, I was literally the epitome of trying to be and do for everyone, all at the detriment of my own self. So I was just taking on all of these different things. And I was having a bit of a realization that normally there's one thing that I know I need to fix. And in this point in time, there was so many things, and it was a little overwhelming, and I didn't know, I knew things had to change, but I didn't know where to even start with that. And then Tracy's ad came on my Facebook, and of course I knew her anyway. So I was like, hook, line and sinker, I am in. Tell me what I need.
But I love your description of that, all of the things that you had going on, two children that needed to go to the hospital regularly, your husband not in a great place, and you said right at the start about how much you always love to help people. And so it's such a great trait to be this generous person that wants to help. And I think it's part of our true essence. We naturally want to be uplifters. But the thing that we got mixed up somewhere along the line, usually through modelling, for me it was modelling my mum, who was a martyr, is that to help people, we've defined that as put everybody else first. And that in my growing up years was really put on a pedestal, the idea of to put others first, to be humble and put others first. And to put yourself first meant that you were selfish. But the problem with that is that when you have so many things going on and you're pulled in so many different directions, and you can't say, oh, this particular problem is more important than this particular problem, all of it needs your attention. The thing that goes first is any attention to yourself. And so in amongst all of that, you lose yourself and you lose any capacity to really be of help to any of those people. And that's really where you were at when we first got started together. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the, I may be going a little further here than what you wanted, but we're going with it anyway. But one of the things that I worked on first with Tracy was, you know, obviously understanding, it was creating and opening that space to be who I was. And I'd spent so many years like being and doing for everyone else that when these questions came at me, and I'm, you know, I do class myself as a strong and confident and courageous woman, but when these questions started coming at me, I actually didn't know any of it. And so it was quite confronting. I remember at the start, Tracy, being like, what? Like, I'm here to help everyone. Like, I want to help everyone more. But that realization that I actually had to become less to become more, like I had to become more of me, not all of the things for everyone else. I just had to become more of me. And I remember going like, oh, I don't even know how to do that, you know?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, becoming less to become more, because I think that sometimes we think to grow, it's about more. And what we've really discovered is that we're coming back to our true essence. So it's becoming less. So it's removing those layers that have been put on us, where we've perceived something like, for me to be acceptable, I need to be a certain way, or I need to do all the time. I need to be there for people and do what they need me to do to fix their lives. And so that undoing is confronting, because it makes you become aware of your limiting beliefs and the things that you believe about yourself that aren't true. And I really want to talk to you about this, Carla, if you're open, and I'm sure you will be. I think that a lot of people who look at Soul Pleaser and hear us talking about the soul and the universe want to reconcile it with their religion, whether they have a religion or whether they don't have a religion. And I've had women and men go through this program and have incredible results, whether they've ever been associated with a church or not. And it doesn't make any difference whether they have or they haven't. But I know for me, reading Conversations with God and going to meet Neil and all of those things really helped me reconcile the rules that I'd grown up with around church and discovering the self, because I think that sometimes we feel like it could be blasphemy to say that we love ourselves and that we can create our own reality. And it's really reconciling it and coming to some understanding that really works for you. So what's your background around religion, and how did Soul Pleaser complement the faith that you already had?
That's a really good question. And I think religion is something that people shy away from because rightly so, we're all allowed to have our own belief. I grew up in a church family. So as a kid, I went to church. My mum and dad helped in the church. My dad was a chaplain in a correctional centre. He's actually a real estate agent, but in his like heart-centered time, yeah, he did chaplaincy work in a correctional centre. So I guess my take on religion was probably not so much the perfect side of, you know, this happy, godly bubble, because I was very well aware of all different dimensions of life and how, you know, having some faith and having some belief in something that is higher than you can be really impactful. And so that was my childhood, right? And then as I grew up, I had some things, you know, in my own life that probably stepped me further away from religion. And so, you know, I'd lost a couple of babies, and I remember at that time being like, well, how is this stuff fair? You know, where is the good in this? You know, and it made me question a lot of stuff. Now I know questioning things is actually one of my strengths, because I have to have this innateness in me that it has to sit right with me. Like whatever anyone else's opinions is, I have to know it to be true for me. So I did step away from church and religion and whatnot for quite some years. And regardless, though, I always took my children to church at Christmas. And one of my kids said to me after church one day, they were like, that was so fun. Can we go again next year? And I went, oh, they think it only happens once a year. Like, oh. And so I was like, well, actually, you know, church happens every Sunday. Like we can go. And then we found this church. My kids found it because they had a challenge at the front of the church and threw a pie, like a cream pie, on someone's face. And anyway, they were like, that's the church we want to go to. So we did. And our church is quite unconventional. In so many ways, or untraditional, I guess is more the right word. But that happened at the time I was doing Soul Pleaser. And I think I had held on to some anger and some probably blame, you know, like all of these things that weren't sitting right with me. And through the Soul Pleaser program, I was able to like unpack that and surrender to that and let that go. And as I said, I was in a pretty rough patch of my life when I came to Tracy. To the outside world, everything appeared amazing still, but it was not that way on the inside. And so for me, I wasn't ready to voice the fact that the world as I knew it wasn't going so great. And so when I walked into the doors of that church that day, I just felt this, I don't know, I guess like flood of relief that I think I'd spent so many years having everyone else's back that I felt like this was my time, that some higher power had my back. And that was really lovely that you had opened my eyes to allowing me to sort of shift back into that surrender and that acceptance of that pure love.
Yeah, you describe it so well. I've got goosebumps because, you know, when I talk about my breakthrough, that's really what happened to me. I was so in control. I, you know, would roll up my sleeves and make things happen and push and push and push and just be available to everybody all the time. And that was me being a good girl, you know, being a good citizen, being who I thought I should be, you know, to feel good about myself and for my parents to be proud of me, I guess, you know, that recognition that you're just always looking for. And when Mum died, I remember just being brought to my knees and surrendering and saying, I give up. I can't do it on my own. This isn't working. What I'm doing isn't working. And I felt like up until then, I lived my life doing it on my own. And now I am connected to this energy, connected to this inner wisdom, universe, God, higher self, soul, whatever word you want to give it, that you can tap into. And you can trust yourself because you can trust that you will be guided. You know, step 3 is follow the signs, where we all can just have our lives guided when we know this self and we trust this part of ourselves. And we don't have to be pulled in lots of different directions by everybody else's opinions. And we can say no thank you to something because it doesn't feel right. As you said, it doesn't sit right with us, and we can trust that. And I think that self-belief is the same as self-trust, and it's the same as trusting life. And so it allows you to be okay during things that are challenging rather than being fearful.
Yeah.
So how has that impacted your life?
Something that just came to my mind as you were talking then, I think one of the sessions we did with you, it was about picking like our theme song or something. And I remember my song at the time being Fight Song by Katy Perry. And I almost laugh at that now because that was the space I was in. I was fighting and I was like, oh, everything was like a battle and I was doing it and I was showing everyone. And now, like, learning how to tap in to that, I just feel that surrendering has allowed me to get into that flow state with trust that life is for me and whatever is meant to be for me will be for me, which is such a nicer spot to be in rather than that continual fighting and pushing and making things happen. So I think that's been the transition.
Yeah. And isn't that a relief to live like that? It's not that you don't get results from pushing, things happen, but God, it's the hard way. Like, I think most of us end up burnt out doing it that way, where we think that everything that comes to us is a direct proportion to how much action we take and how hard it is. There are sayings to back that up, no pain, no gain, you've got to be challenged and have blood, sweat and tears to get what you want. So we've sort of been taught that it has to be really hard.
Yeah.
And, perhaps that's what we do. We come in and give that a go first. And then for the lucky ones, we wake up and go, oh, it doesn't have to be that hard. We actually have this, energy we can tap into where we just trust it and go with that flow. So one of the things that really improved for you as a result were your relationships. And this is so connected to self-belief because, as I always say, our relationships are always a mirror of our relationship with ourselves. So we can try to fix a relationship, we can try to fix or change the other person. Many of us are guilty of that. If only so-and-so would just do such and such better, or instead of whatever it is they're doing, life would be better. But when we work on ourselves and we have this good relationship with ourselves and who we are, it's reflected back to us. So how did things change with your relationships as a result of getting this closer relationship with yourself?
Yeah, so probably in every aspect they changed. My husband and I think through me owning and becoming owning my story and becoming a priority in my own life, I woke up to the fact that if I wanted to feel better about myself and if I wanted to, have these beautiful connections and feel truly happy, I had to do that for me. Like, it wasn't his responsibility. And likewise with my children, if I wanted to embed in them that it was my responsibility to make them happy and to do all of these things and whatever, that is what I was showing them. That is the way that I was bringing them up. And so changing the relationship that I had with myself meant that I was naturally empowering them to take control of their own story and their own journey. And that, if my husband wasn't feeling so great in that time, previously we wouldn't have had the conversations. But by doing this work, I was able to go, I see you and I get you. This is the way that I'm feeling. How can we change this story? And I think, having that, like, all cards laid out on the table, sort of the ability to have those types of conversations, shifted our relationship incredibly. And it just changed the dynamics so much because I think he thought that I was always wanting more and doing all of these things. And there was this never ending realm of expectations for him to keep up to. And when we sort of come back to the actual core of all of it, just from me doing that work and me improving that relationship with myself, it just meant everyone could just be. And I was so much more accepting of everyone being who they are and encouraging them to just be who they were, because I'd learnt to do that myself.
Yeah. The level that you can take your relationships to when you start to be truly honest and create the space for vulnerability and honesty, you even relationships that are really good to begin with can just go to another level when you first of all are honest with yourself. I think that sometimes we don't know what's true for us because we're so used to fitting in, going along with other people, saying what people want to hear, that we've lost ourselves in that way and we've lost what's true for us. So the first step is to be able to tune in, find out and discover what's true for you, what feels good for you, and then to have the confidence to say it. And I think the confidence to say it is really comes down to the fear of rejection. You know, we don't sometimes say things because of the response we might get. And even with our kids, it's so easy to people please our kids because we feel for them when they feel a negative emotion. So if we say no to them, or if we don't bend over backwards for them and they're upset, we're not teaching them any resilience or any ability to feel their emotions. So it's incredible to be able to start opening up that communication with your husband, with your wife, with your children, you know, work colleagues, friends, and just being able to say no to some things and say yes to other things that are just for you. It really changes everything.
That's so right. And the saying no to some things and yes to other things. Like I remember one night, my husband and I sat down with the Wheel of Life. It was an exercise that I'd done, you know, in conjunction with all the work I was doing with Tracy. And I said to Sam, we need to do this together. Like, I really feel like it would be good for us to get on the same page with where each other is feeling. And so if anyone hasn't done the Wheel of Life, it's basically where you look at each aspect of your life and rate them and then work out, you know, what's working, what's not, where you need to sort of spend some attention. And it was so interesting for us because the areas that we rated individually rated really poorly, we both rated the same. And it was like complete honesty of going, well, why did you rate that? And what is it? What do you need to improve in this area? And it's something that you have to be not taking personally, the feedback that you get around this sort of stuff. And when you can do that, what that did for us was really create the space for both of us, both my husband and myself, to create the time for each other and allow each other to prioritize the things that we both each as individuals needed to become our best selves, which then meant that as a couple, we were giving each other so much better versions of us as individuals.
Yeah, and that is such a good point. And it reminds me too that occasionally in couples, I see that if one person's self-belief grows faster than the other can feel threatened by it. And so it's really important, if you're doing the work on yourself and your self-belief is growing and your partner is not ready for it, that you're reassuring to your partner as well that, you know, you love them and there's no expectation, because you can't speed up someone else's growth. Yeah. You know, it's really interesting how frustrating sometimes people can find it when they're growing really quickly and they feel like they're leaving their partner behind. And I think that comes down to trust as well, to know that if you keep focus on your own self-development, that it will all work out perfectly and you don't have to push that. But that open communication is really great. So I'd love to talk about your body image, because that is the path that you've taken with your business, which is really exciting. When Carla first came to me, she hated her body at the time and really wanted to do something about it. And one of the things that came out of Soul Pleaser is she realised that she was putting everybody else first by being pulled in so many different directions, and obviously having quite high demands, even over and above the average family, that eating well and exercising and anything that was going to help you health-wise was out the window because you didn't feel like you deserved it.
Yeah, that's right. And, I didn't have time for myself was probably the biggest thing. Part of that I blamed them for. I remember having a conversation with you and you were like, well, who do you blame on your body? And I was like, my husband and my kids. And it was ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous. And you were like, why? And I said, well, because I don't have time. I don't have time to do any of these things for myself. And, once I started to create the time, there was no pushback from any of them. Like, it was all this rubbish story that I had made up in my head because I had just got so deep in doing everything for everyone else that I had no time for me. And so, yes, my body absolutely reflected where I sat on my list of priorities.
Yeah. So there might be somebody watching now, or somebody who watches the recording, who is right where you used to be and just says, I don't have time. And you use the word, I created time. Can you explain how you created time with such a busy schedule that you had? How did you do that?
I don't know how I did it originally. I think it was a combination of the tools that you taught in my ability to stop being such a people pleaser, because I was people pleasing in every aspect of my life. And so when I learned to say no, I created the time for other things. And so when I say my body was very much a reflection of my list of priorities, I think I got very clear on my values and my priorities, because ultimately it was evident that I couldn't do all of the things, and I had to come back and focus on what was actually important. And so the things that I said yes to had to align with my values and priorities, and whatever didn't, it was a no. And at that stage, I knew if I wanted to keep running and doing what I was doing in my business and my family and all of those things, I had to say no to so much else and just, really make the time for those important things. And so fast forward to now, I don't know when this change happened, but I did get really good at the start of making time for myself, to not only do that work, but to just be. And now my motto is me first, then others. So every day, I am the top of my priority list. And it seems so funny because I would have thought 5 years ago when you had mentioned that to me, I would have been like, that is ridiculous. Like, no way. And now I'm like, yeah, no, sorry, me first, then other people, because I know that when I've gone for my walk of a morning and I've done all the things that I need to do that fills up my cup, I come back in such a nice, positive, beautiful space, and can be of so much more value to my family, as opposed to if I don't feel that self up of me, if I'm not feeling great, well,
Exactly.
it goes on.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. And such a beautiful example to set for your children, for them to see you do that. And I'm sure that there's a huge flow-on effect to them, and they can grow up and be who they want to be and make themselves a priority as well.
Yeah.
So can you explain how you've ended up creating this business, where the thoughts first came from, how you ended up creating this business, as well as your hairdressing business?
Yeah. So I, after doing a lot of work on myself, I was starting to feel really good about me, not only just physically, but internally. And I was actually okay with having those conversations. I mentioned right at the start about having our social mask, and I had got so comfortable that I was totally okay with taking that off. And so when I was having the women come into my hairdressing chair, and I was hearing the same things, I was finally able to see all these women that were burnt out and exhausted and hated the way that they looked and felt. And I remember having that conversation with you, Tracy, going like, I have done so much work here and I know how to help them. And I just had this fire in my belly to be able to help other women experience a similar transformation. And I think I'd spent, my whole hairdressing career helping women look and feel good. But it was like the quick fix, and I really found that because of the work that I had done and the close relationships I had with my hairdressing clients, we were able to have such real and raw conversations that I went, this needs to change, not only for our own self as women to be able to, eradicate that self-doubt, to become a priority in our life and to be of so much more value to the people that we love the most. But also, I've got 2 girls, and what I was noticing was that the improved relationship that I was having with my body, it impacts them. So not only did I discover that I really wanted to help other women experience this change, but in doing so, we create such a beautiful positive flow-on effect for the generations to come.
Fantastic. So you've got a business and a program that you run. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I do. So my brand is just called Carla Bond, and I'm a self-mastery and body confidence coach for women. So it's an extension of all of this work, and I absolutely love it. So I've developed a 8-week program, and it's called Think Feel You, and it's basically a holistic approach helping women feel happy, limitless and confident in life and in their body. And I'm so passionate about it, and it's just become such a beautiful part of my life. And I'm actually really excited because tonight I have the Osmumpreneur of the Year Awards, and I'm a finalist for this particular business in 3 of the categories. So,
congratulations! That's fantastic.
Thank you. So I'm so excited because what started out as me crashing and burning and just realizing the fact that I needed to help myself has had the most beautiful flow-on effect that I can now help and impact so many other women and children, and it's just beautiful.
That's amazing. That's so inspiring. And I think it's really inspiring to anyone who's listening, who's at the stage where they do feel burnt out or things aren't working out well for you, to know that I always say that a breakdown is a breakthrough. So if you're crashing and burning, like, it's actually a great sign, even though it feels terrible when you're in the middle of it. It's often the platform or the bouncing board towards really great, wonderful things. And it just always takes the inner work. If we don't shed the layers and get rid of the limiting beliefs, discover our true self, honor the self, know who you are and be who you are, it just limits you to be able to live the life that you really want to live. A lot of people asking me about their purpose, and you've described your story, and Hayley last week and Leanne the week before described theirs. And the 3 of you are all examples where you've been able to really reflect on your story and turn your story into a business. I always say to people that it doesn't need to be a business. When you find your purpose, it really is about finding yourself and what's joyful for you. And when you said that about who you're helping, that really lit you up. What is it about this business that excites you so much? What do you love about it? Why would you say you've found a purpose in this?
Yeah, so I love when I work with women and I see not the facade, but the real side of how they come into doing this work on themselves, and like the freedom of shedding these layers and accepting and owning who they are and just really being that best version of themselves. One of the ladies that I have worked with who really touched me, she has a very big story, which I won't go into, but since she was 6, she had never put on swimmers and gone into the water at the beach. And we live at the beach. And this lady has 2 beautiful children and some stepchildren. And they have never, ever played on the beach with her or done any of those things. And I remember when I look back at my story, there was so much life that I watched from the sidelines. And that sucks because life is both too long and too short. And so after doing work with this beautiful lady who is gorgeous, she's actually an ex-personal trainer. And so there was nothing wrong with her body. The problem wasn't with her body. The problem was what was going on inside her heart and in her head. And so I often say this work, it's a combination of that head work, the heart work, and the physical work. But I went to the beach with her this particular day and I said to her, "Where are your swimmers?" And she's like, "I don't know, Nenny." So she had to go and buy some, and because it just was so far off her radar of things to do. Anyway, she went and bought swimmers, and I said to her, "Look, even if we just sit on the beach the first time, that is okay." And next minute, we're in the waves and she's in her swimmers in the water. And I said to her, "Man, I can't believe this." And she was just so excited. And normally I like to keep the work that I do with people, more confidential because some of it is private. And I said to her, "I really want to talk about this story." I said, are you happy for me to do that? And she's like, "Yes, and share my name. I want to own this story." So her girls were so excited that her mum went into the water at the beach, and it was like she's in her 40s and she was 6. So it was like 35 or 8 years or something that she had really shut off that part of joy in her life. And it's just changed the way that she not only is going to be able to function as a woman, but in her relationships and with other people, that's involved with, all aspects of our body. And also to be able to share that experience now and rewrite the story for her own children. I just found that so powerful. So this is the stuff that lights me up. It's, it's not, I guess, the business side or the recognition side or any of that. It's that underlying heart-centered change that as women, women are powerful, and when we feel really good, there is that huge flow-on effect. So that's the stuff that lights me up.
Yeah, I know. It's just amazing, isn't it? That's fantastic. If anybody has any questions for Carla, please feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat box. And I will share links to Carla's website so that you can get in touch if you would like to find out about her body confidence program, because it's online, isn't it? People don't need to live near you to be able to do it.
No, that's right. It's all online.
Yeah.
So very easy.
Yeah, fantastic.
So thank you for introducing me to the world of online learning as well.
I know. It's a wonderful platform. It just means that we don't have to exclude anyone, so everyone can have access and you can get really close to people virtually. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So good luck tonight with your nominations. Congratulations. That's really exciting. And thank you so much for being a guest today. It's very inspiring hearing your story. And it's hard to believe you ever didn't have confidence, but I think that's the case with most people. And it's just so wonderful to see how happy you are now. No questions, but you're truly inspiring and full of light. Good luck. Thank you. Thank you, Trish and Simon. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing, Carla. Very inspirational. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. And Trish, your face is under me on my screen here, and you have been so beautiful watching your facial expressions as we're talking. So thank you for being here too.
It's very encouraging, isn't it?
Yes, it's awesome. Yeah. It's beautiful. So, and thank you so much, Tracy, because I think it was back in 2017 that we started doing all of this work together. And gosh, if you had have told me then that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, it would have just been quite so funny, really. So I'm so grateful that I dove all in and, did all of that work with you, because it truly has been such a beautiful impact in my life.
Oh, you're so welcome. And it's so funny to hear you say that, because I knew you would be doing this back then. I knew it. I just knew it.
Well, I did often say, I think there was a lot of conversations at the start where Tracy would say something and I'd be like, my God, you know me better than I know myself.
It's a very annoying little knack I have. I don't like to say I told you so, but I did.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Carla. See you later.